Hey everyone, welcome to Group Text. Sometimes there's someone I want to have on the show simply because I want to meet them. Because I think that they're smart and inspiring and someone I think all of you should know. In August 2022, while on a dream vacation in Croatia, Loren Ridinger suddenly lost her husband of more than 30 years, J.R. Ridinger, to a pulmonary embolism, leaving Loren to run the business that she and J.R. founded, which is MarketAmerica, shop.com. She also had to put the broken pieces of her life, not just as a CEO, but as a mother, a grandmother, and now suddenly a young widow, back together. Loren unflinchingly writes about this journey in her New York Times bestselling memoir, Scrambled or Sunny Side Up, Living Your Best Life After Losing Your Greatest Love. Loren, welcome to Group Text.
I'm so happy to be here with you. Love you, admire you for so long, watched you and your mom. You know, we grew up together, so I'm happy to be here. It's a kind of a surreal moment.
Well, thank you. I love women that not only achieve in business, but achieve in their personal lives as well. And you're a mother and a grandmother. So you've managed to somehow balance all of this while becoming wildly successful, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Your book is very raw and very honest, but uplifting in a way. First tell us how JR passed.
He passed away. We had just finished our company's 30th annual celebration, worldwide convention. And he had been wanting to go to Croatia for as long as I can remember. It was on his bucket list. I wasn't quite sure because I was really trying to push him to go to Saint-Tropez again or Italy again. And he kept saying, I really want to go Croatia. And so I surprised him. I got a yacht out there. He was so excited to go take this journey together. We had not been on a trip since long before COVID. I can't remember the last time we ever took a vacation alone without our grandkids, without Amber. It was the first time in a long time, and he was just grateful. And so we went out there and we got on this boat, and it was just the way he would have liked it. Not too big, not too overdone. He liked the thought of still being frugal, even though we had been wildly successful. As you had said, we'd worked from nothing. We both had nothing. So he always liked the thought of what felt like getting a lot for what you had to pay for. And so he was so happy with the yacht.
You still like getting a deal.
He thought he was getting a deal, and we were going out there together. And I remember on the plane out there, he just looked at me and he's like, I can't believe you made this happen. Like, I can't believe we're actually going away for the first time in years together. What are we going to do? I was like, nothing, just enjoy each other. And I remember it. I took a photo of that moment. I have that photo, and it was a beautiful moment. And, you know, we had 2 or 3 days out there, and I noticed that he started getting very quiet, and it was very internal, which is unusual for JR. He's very much needed to be in talking with me all the time, as I did him. And I'd asked him multiple times during those few days, do you feel okay? Is everything okay? And he's like, yeah, I'm great. You know, I thought he was tired. We just had this big event. We had Ben and Jen's wedding. We had so much happening in just a few day period. And that convention is like months of work prior to getting there. And I remember my brother and his wife were on the trip, and my brother said, is Jay okay? He's just not himself. I said, I know. And he said, he's looking over the water, pondering his life. And it just felt awkward. And that morning is when he woke up and he said, I just want to let you know you've made me the happiest person in the world. And I'll never forget it, you know. It was a tough moment for me. I didn't know why he was saying it. I was confused by it. And so I was like, why are you talking like that? You know, it's funny because when people are really successful, even though you meet them when they're not successful, you never know where the appetite gets satisfied. I never knew if he was full. And I didn't really care because I fell in love with him without anything. So for me, but then I got on this mission, you know, I'm 18 years younger. I was like, okay, well, we're doing great. Let's keep going. And I was younger. So, you know, he had written me October of 21 and said, I want to go away with you. I want you and I to just go lock in now. I want us to spend the next last quarter of our life, just you and I. Let's sneak away. Let's not tell anybody. Let's just do the big events of the company and go live our life. And so I said, can you wait till August? Can you wait till the August convention is over? And he said, okay, but that's it. And so, I waited. The first time ever, I was like, okay, we're going to do this. And then, he walked by me and a few hours after he said that to me in the morning, he took a deep breath and I didn't like how he sounded. And I said, why do you sound like that? Why are you struggling to catch your breath? And he said, stay here. Like, in the man voice he has, I was always in charge of our house. But in this particular moment, there was moments in our life where you knew JR was in charge.
Right.
That was one of those moments. So I thought maybe he had acid reflux. I gave him his moment like he would like. But when he didn't come back up 5 minutes later, about 4 minutes later, I felt a sickness in my stomach. But I'll never forget that feeling. And I looked at Mark and I was like, can you go check on JR right now? Because I was still on a conference call. And at that time, his wife came through and said, well, JR's on the floor doing yoga. And I knew I lost him at that moment. I knew that he was not doing yoga. JR would never leave me in the middle of a conference call. He enjoyed that. He thrived off of watching me work. And I dropped the phone, not realizing I never even hung up with them. They listened to the whole several-hour conversation of the hystericalness. And we were out at sea, and I lost him instantly. And I didn't know if it was heart. I assumed it was heart, at that moment. I had no idea. It wasn't until many hours later that the coroner had told me that, it wasn't his heart. He had a pulmonary embolism. I mean, we can tell by his eyes, the position of his eyes. There's no amount of, CPR, defibrillator that would have saved him. And, I was in the middle of the water, helpless, in a place
Right.
that, I didn't speak the language. It was an awful, it was a traumatizing. You're not just dealing with grief, and you're one who understands grief very well, but somebody who was also dealing with this whole PTSD of what I was going through. And, I didn't have my kids there.
Well,
I
and
thought my life was,
you had to make those phone calls.
it was awful. It was not good. It was not a good time, and it took me a long time, as you well know, that when you're suffering greatly, you can be in a room full of people and never see a single one of them.
Absolutely. How did you two meet?
It's
Because there was
funny.
an age difference.
Yeah, I was working as a little assistant in this office. He was brought in as a consultant in North Carolina for like the as seen on TV, like the ab buster type of machine back in
Infotainment.
1988.
Yeah, that was
Infomercial.
yeah, infomercial infotainment.
Yeah. And I thought he came in the office and he looked at me and he's like, oh, you're a little tiger. Look at you getting all your stuff done. And I thought, is this guy trying to come on to me? And he's like, I'm not. I'm not at all. And then he wrote me the next day, do you want to I saw him at a party and I asked him if he wanted to dance and he said no. I was like, you don't want to dance with me? I was confused by that. He knew how to play his cards right. And I just literally fell mad in love with him in such a short period of time because he just didn't make a big deal out of me. He was very normal and very much about who he was. He had nothing to offer except he was charismatic. And at the moment, he was really kind. I didn't know he had a slew of other girlfriends. He had done things like he just knew how to play his cards well. And I fell mad in love with him, Melissa. I just didn't want to live my life without him. And I knew it from 18 to 19, I was in hook, line, and sinker. I told my mom I met the man of my dreams, but he's a cheater. He has lots of girlfriends. And she kept telling me, Loren, he is going to be the most amazing husband one day, the most amazing father and grandfather. Give him time. Your time zone is not the same as his, and you can't expect it. And
So
I've
how
never
I was saying,
really understood that.
right, but so how long did it take?
It took him a good year and a half, two
That's
years.
not bad.
No, but a good year and a half, 2 years of really like not in the relationship, a year and a half to 2 years after we were dating for a good year. So a total of good 3 or 4 years for him to really figure out like she's the one. I don't want to give in. I don't want to give up. I want to fight for her. I'm not going to let her feel this way anymore. I'm not going to have 10 girlfriends, and I was confused by it. I was so, I was a girl who was dating like the high school quarterback and,
Right.
just different. I was so enthralled by this guy who had nothing to offer truly, except there was something about him that I was excited by. He could see, he used to say, one day there'll be a place where people can shop, the mall without walls. And I used to think, wow, that's a interesting term. And I was a part of that vision with him. I could see it so clearly. And I was excited by that. I was excited about getting out of my house and getting out of North Carolina. Even though I grew up in New York, I didn't want to be where I was anymore. And I wanted to follow this guy who had this incredible vision. And I didn't really understand vision, but I wanted it. I was too
Yeah.
young to really know what I was doing. But I really fell for him big time, and it never changed.
How did you guys take the leap to create shop.com? Because at the time, it was, the market was, there were a lot of things like this going on.
Well, Amazon hadn't started till we started April of 92. Amazon didn't start till I believe September of 92 or April of 93. Nobody was, and remember the internet back then, it was called the World Wide Web, and back then it was just more information, it wasn't really products or stores. And so it was a conversation we would tell people like, hey, we didn't have any money to buy 10,000 books or 10,000, bottles of shampoo or vitamins. It was more like, can you believe in us? One day we're going to be online and selling lots of product. And we would knock on door to door, literally, and tell people about our products. And back then it was just like one product that did really well. And the funny thing is it was such, we had a lot of bomb products, but then we had like one product that did really well. And then
what was it?
It was a product that it was like an ephedra product that did really well. And then the government took ephedra off the market. So overnight we lost everything we had built. And I panicked, and he never panicked. He used to say, it's okay, we got this far, we'd try again. And he was a marine biologist by trade, so he loved to mix formulas. And I mean, our bathroom was an entire lab. And so he would mix products and formulas, and we would try things. And I'd never been on a journey like that. I'd never been with somebody who would just like adjust things and tweak things and not give in to every no he got, every no. And I didn't speak back then. I was scared to speak. He pushed me in that direction, but in the beginning he did all the talking, and I would just follow and, learn from him. And, on our second date, he had taken me to a graveyard, and I thought, this guy's going to kill me. This guy's going to kill me. Must be a mass murderer. What is he doing? And he was like, get out of the car.
Yeah, this is going to be it's going to be a Dateline episode.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be a Dateline episode for sure. And so we walked up in Crime Channel. And so we walked up and down the aisles. He's like, pick any one of these. Pick any one of these. And I was like, okay. And he goes, that one? I said, yeah. He goes, let me tell you. He goes, everybody has a birth date, Loren. Everybody has a death date. It's what you do with that little line in between. I had never heard that before. He's like, if you're going to be with me, we're going to do something with that line, that dash. And I thought, this guy's going to change my life. I'm going to fall in love with this guy. I think that was it.
Okay, just quick question. How did you explain to your mother that you went on a date in a graveyard? And how have you explained this to your children? Because my mom and dad knew each other 5 days before they got married. And they both said to me, if you ever do that, we will kill you.
Of course. We cannot do what our parents do, right? My mom, I told my mom everything, and she thought he was special. She saw something in him that I could not see. My dad did not like him at first at all. It took a few years. But he apologized too. He said, I didn't see it. I didn't get it. I don't have the vision of your mom. And sometimes one of our parents don't, right? And so I fell mad in love with him at that moment. And he said, I want you to go on this journey with me. I want us to live our life in the very best way. And I want us to do something with every waking moment that we're living and breathing. And it doesn't matter how many no's we'll get. There'll be practice till we get to the yeses. And I thought, who is this guy? Who has nothing to offer, not a car. We were riding around in a beat up car with a broken off mirror on the side, and the door was bent in from, and he was going so fast down the road, like 85 miles an hour in North Carolina in Greensboro. And I was like, you cannot go 85 miles an hour on the street. He goes, well, if I had a license, I'd go faster. So I knew.
So then you're like, wait. You don't have a license?
No, he was on a suspended license for driving so many times too fast. And so I remember thinking in that moment, I remember, you know, when you can place yourself in a place, I could see myself as I talk to you in that seat thinking, this guy's going to take me on the ride of my life. And we did. And he did. And it was the most remarkable journey of love and patience and understanding and kindness. And some days you want to kill each other and some days you hate each other. But the most beautiful journey of all, because, you know, I was the ass who would always be like in a fight, like, okay, maybe we're not meant to be. This is too hard. This is too much work. And he would be like, you want to throw in the towel just because of a speed bump? Like of a speed bump. And, you know, I would listen to him and I would be like, what am I doing? And I would think more and be more because of it. And, you know, as we started to grow this concept in his mind that he had started about the internet and the world, the World Wide Web and this mall without walls. And one day people will buy their shoes, their socks, their makeup, which seemed preposterous to me because we tried on our makeup in stores under those awful lights of those years, right?
Right.
And he would go place to place, city to city, we'd drive across the country. And he would tell people about this idea, literally city to city, door to door, until one day I watched people look at him. And I could tell there was like 10 people in the room, not like today when I speak for 20,000 people. When he and I spoke for 20,000 people every year, multiple times. There was like 10 people in the room. And I remember they looked at him like he was crazy. And when he walked out of the room, he was like, that was a great meeting, wasn't it, babe? Wasn't that a great meeting? I was like, I'm not sure if they agree. And he's like, it doesn't matter what they think. What matters is, what do you think? What do you think, Loren? What do you believe? Do you believe we can do it? I was like, yeah. He's like, okay, then you do it tomorrow. You hold the meeting tomorrow. And I was like, please don't make me do this. I can't do what you can do. He said, no, you're the greatest female speaker. I said, that's impossible. You've never heard me speak yet. He's like, you're the greatest female speaker. You just don't know it yet. You're going to speak tomorrow. I did in front of 7 people, passed out on the ground, passed out after I said my name. Everybody was waving me, trying to wake me up from being passed out. I was so embarrassed. He's like, get up. It's fine. It was hot in here. They turned the AC off. We're in San Antonio. You got to expect it to be hot. It's not your fault. You're going to be great tomorrow in Houston. And all I kept thinking about on that drive to Houston was, how could I break up with this guy? I was scared to death to let him down, so I didn't want to do it, which is so often why we don't go for what we want to go for. We're just afraid, right?
Yeah.
We're afraid to be embarrassed. We're afraid of what other people think. And he got in that car and he goes, you do know that you're destined to be great. You got to keep trying. And I did. From that moment on, I kept trying every day. It wasn't for like 6, 7 years later that I felt like I could stand up and hold my own in front of a crowd. It took me a long time, but I would have never had that had I not believed in what he said, if he had not believed in me.
So you grow this amazing company. You're deeply committed to not just being business partners, but being husband and wife and parent. And your lives are so intertwined. And you basically, as I like to say, got brought to your knees. And in your book, you really focus on, you know, I love Scrambled or Sunny Side Up. It's such a wonderful metaphor. You talk about loss and having to rebuild yourself in the wake of dedication. And one thing I know is, and I'm sure you've learned this, is everyone has their own personal grief process. And you can't be judgmental, and everybody's on a different timeline. How long did it take you to get up off the floor?
I need to tell you, I had to get up every day. I got up. I was not aware of my surroundings at all. I lived in a haze, in a deep clouded fog for 2 years. And we're 2.5 years in, and it's the first time in 6 months that I see that there's sun, that I see that there's rainbows again. And I still cry every day. I do. Every night when I go to bed, my daughter woke me up. She came and cuddled with me with my grandkids last night. We all slept together. Serena Williams came over. We just had a whole house full of kids, and everybody else spent the night together. And she woke me up, said, Mama, are you okay? You're crying in your sleep. And I said, yep, I'm just talking to your dad. And I cry every day, and I go through it every day. And I got up every day, no matter what. I just didn't see who was around me. And I couldn't deal for the first time ever. I was always Jared called me Nurse Pritchett, Dear Abby, so many names for me. And I couldn't see anyone else's pain but mine. And I was angry,
Oh yeah.
angry, angry. Do you know what I mean? Angry.
Oh, I know.
Oh,
I know angry.
oof.
I personally, for me, my first goal after my father, um,
Which that was hard, traumatizing.
and 18,
I get it.
you know, for me, there were some days I could get up and get out, and there were some days I could take 2 steps across the room and turn around and get back in bed. The lesson for me with that was you have to allow yourself to do that and not beat up on yourself.
I know, and you're right.
And
And it was hard. I beat up on myself a lot. I was mad at myself. I didn't see certain things. I was mad, and I'm sure you went through that too. You go through that phase of like, why didn't I do this different? Why didn't I see he was limping a little bit more? Why didn't I
right.
catch this? It makes you more mad.
Part of I found for myself, and for me, I found my experiences with losing my mother and losing my father vastly different experiences, which is strange because there was so much in common in going to bed one night with my life intact and waking up at the next day completely shattered or different
It's so funny. I did too with my own parents. Like I lost my mom, she was 42, who I was very close to. And then I lost my dad when he was 63. And I wasn't as close to him, even though they were married. But I felt so broken when my dad died. I was devastated when my mom died. But when my dad died, I felt like it was the end of an era. Where was
I
Loren?
by the way, I called it with my dad, it was a comma. With my mom, it was a period.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And psychologically, that's very different. The hardest thing for me, and I mean, okay, first of all, I lose myself in my work. And one of my big frustrations was because it was so public, people were not letting me go back to work. And I wanted to scream my lungs out. How was it when you were ready to go back to work? And for the first 6 weeks, you can't handle anything.
I
How
didn't do
long?
anything for the first 6 weeks. I was just not functionable at all. I mean, I would get up, I would shower, I'd try to take a phone call, try to do something. I did, but then 5 months after JR passed away, and at one of the worst moments of my grief, we had a conference, a convention with like 6,000 people, a smaller one, and I remember like I don't have to do this if I don't want to do this, but I did it anyway, and I showed up, and I just, I went up there and I said the truth. I don't know what I'm going to say, and how bad I'll mess this up. And I know that there's like all these eyes on me and this expectation that I could be him, but I can't. But I only know how to be me, so I'm going to do the very best I can. And I remember they went crazy. They were so proud and they jumped up and down and they were, crying. And I got thousands of letters. When he died, I'd gotten thousands of letters, but I gotten so many letters after that moment, I think because people just saw me show up and they didn't really care if I messed up or not messed up. They just
Mhm.
wanted to know that we were still here. And they knew the love. Jared was very expressive about his love for me from the stage, very expressive to me and on stage and behind the stage. He was very much that way, where I was more of the funny girl,
Yeah.
behind the scenes, making fun about
Yeah.
it. Like I didn't need to be the mush in front of everybody because he knew I was mushy, but behind the scenes, he was, he made me love men. My dad never cried. Jared cried every time he was on stage. He cried in front of my grandchildren, in front of my daughter, in front of a great movie that was a Pretty Woman. It didn't matter what movie he would stop. And he thought it was manly to cry. And I believe that because of
I do
him.
too.
I
I do
did.
too.
Don't you love that? Like, I love that about him.
Okay, but so you go back to work. How long? It's two questions before everybody stopped tiptoeing, and
Oh,
how
God.
long before they believed that you could run the company?
A full year. I would say it was a full year and a half. The reason I say that is the first event was in Miami. The second event was in North Carolina. It wasn't until I was back in Miami again a year and a half later that I had this, after a big convention with 10,000 people, all these leaders came on to see me after the show was over. And they said, we'll follow you till the end of the earth. We'll go wherever you go, wherever you tell us to go. And I knew it in that moment. I felt the love in that moment, but I felt good about where I had been, how far I'd come. I knew that my work would help me get through a lot of this.
But it's also that moment where you're getting respect as you,
It happened. It happened
not
in
as an
that moment.
appendage
Yep.
or
It,
as a
it was a year and
partner.
a half in, and I had gotten their respect over the years, but I always gave the respect to JR as being like, you're the main leader, you're the one we follow. And it's funny because at the 30th convention in front of everybody at the very end, two things happened. One, he looked at me and said, will you do this he always broke this alarm clock on stage that he did with me at home and the children. He would say things like, we'll never be controlled by an alarm clock. We're not going to have people tell us how we have to live our life. And he would smash the alarm clock with the children every month to let them know that that meant freedom. So he would break it on stage all the time, but he didn't have time at the 30th. And he asked me to do it. And I was like, I don't know if I have time. Let me see if I can fit it in. And I didn't fit it in. And I was pissed off because he asked me to do it for the first time in 30 years and I didn't do it. But he said something at the end. He stood up in front of everybody and said, you know, my wife can do this without me now. I was like, why do you talk like that? Why do you say things like that? When you say things like, I can't do it without you. So why do you say it to people like that? I don't want to do it without you. When you're out, I'm out. We're in this together, bro. You know?
Yeah.
And he just would say different things. And, you know, he was the healthiest. His parents lived till 100. He should have lived till 100. I think Jared went out exactly how he wanted to go out, where he wanted to go out, as a winner, as he wanted to. You know, Amber looked at me and she said to me recently, Mama, Daddy would have never wanted to get old. He
No.
would have never wanted you to take care of him. He would have never wanted to feel anything but a champion. I couldn't cuddle him like this I do with you when you cry at night. I can't hold him like I hold you at night. You know, I suffer at night. My grandkids suffer and they see it. And we live this big, beautiful life that he created and we created with him, but it's hard. And so, you know, she's like, Mama, I couldn't have done this to him. He would not have been able to live without you. And so now that gives me a lot of life. And I heard this interview she did one time when they asked her, how is life without your dad? And she said, I didn't just lose my dad, I lost my mom too. That broke me to pieces. And I'm sure your mom probably felt that way also about
I
her.
felt that way. We had a very open
I
and
was gonna
honest
say.
conversation, which at the time made no sense to me and just made me angry, where she said, I can't save you until I save myself.
There
And
you
at
go.
18, that feels very different than it does now. Now I get it. At the time, I was like,
Didn't.
really? Fuck you. You know what I
That's the
mean?
way I felt. I was like, I felt the same way too. And I was like, I can't deal with your grief while I'm dealing with mine. I've never done that. I'm the grandmother, the mother who shows up for everything. I make sure 10 people are taking care of everything. I couldn't take care of anything. It took a year and a half for people to believe in me and what I could stand for myself. And then I didn't believe in myself completely then, but it took a year and a half for other people. And then I really started to work on who am I? And I started to spend a lot more time alone to find
Well,
out who I was again.
and then the next step is, what do you want?
Yeah. And it's funny, after I pondered and pondered and pondered, I thought to myself, I need to get back on the road and start talking to people. So January 15th of last year, I started this tour. And I was like, I'm going to go do a tour. And I told everybody at the company, they were like, are you crazy? You shouldn't be out there by yourself. I hated flying alone. I hated doing things alone. And I was like, I'm going on my own and I'm going to figure out what makes me happy again. And being with the people made me happy. And getting their energy made me happy, and feeling their purpose and hearing other people's purposes. And it wasn't until Serena had said to me, Loren, I'd fired 5 grief counselors. I'd never had a counselor in my whole life. And Jared and I used to joke. He said, babe, if you need a counselor, I'm your therapist. I'd be like, you're ridiculous. And I went through 5 therapists, and Amber said, Mom, your anger's out of control. You're angry all the time. You're breaking everything. You know, not at them. I would just, she'd come home and everything would be broken around me. I'd be upset. And Serena's like, go to a group class. And I did. And I walked in that group class and I thought, nobody's there. You know, when you're dealing with grief and you lost your dad and lost your mom, you never think anybody knows how your relationship is. They can't suffer as much as you suffer. And so I walked in there like, some women love their husbands a lot. Some women didn't. Some people were on the verge of divorce, but most people in there loved their husband, but they were moving into, and they were suffering, but they had something I didn't have they were dealing with. And that was the loss of everything. the loss of their homes, the loss of their vehicles, a way to pay their bills, a way to make a means, pay a light bill. And I thought for a moment how fortunate I was that I didn't have to struggle that way, and that JR had put away for his grandchildren. I didn't even know what JR's will said. It said, look, I want my wife to do it all. I want my wife to take care of all the money. I left money for my kids. I left money for my daughter. I don't need to worry about anything else. Everything will be okay as long as she's in charge. She's taken care of me for 36 years. She won't let me down. I trust her with my life. I didn't know it ever said that. I never questioned it. I always just assumed that, whatever. I would always be here. I always thought it would be me first. I'm the one with the brain aneurysm. I'm the one who had breast cancer issues. I'm the one who had issues that were problems. And so I never questioned anything. And so I wanted to find myself. But when those women had no way of surviving, I thought, I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure that when somebody suffers with this type of pain, that they have somebody to talk to, that they can find another way. I'd spent my life with JR making other way for people to become entrepreneurs in our business. And so I went back to work really with the purpose that I had always had, which was the intent to help people. And it has served my purpose well, being a servant for others. It's the only thing that has ever worked for me.
You bring up anger, and that touches parts of me because that's my default before grief, even though I know the sadness is coming. And I've just experienced that with the fires. And my therapist was like, the sad is coming. I'm like, yeah, but I immediately default to anger. And I think a lot of that, like you just said, is acknowledging that you're angry and that it's okay.
Yeah, and it is. And you know what's funny about that when you say that? It wasn't okay for other people, though. Like,
No.
and they would get pissed off, be like, she's an ass, she's a bitch, she's a this, she's a that. And I'd be like, and then I really got mad. You know what I'm saying? But at night, I took 8 online anger management classes on my own. I knew it was there. I was trying to manage it. I didn't want to hate everybody. I didn't want to be mad. I felt like I lost everything in that moment. One single second. How could we just be going away for the beginning of our life after spending 30 years building a company, 36 together? I used to say every time we went to a different state, do you think one day we'll come back and visit and get to see it? I didn't care because we were together. But at the same token, we were just beginning this new journey of Loren and JR. So I was pissed off. And I was pissed at Amber in many ways, to be honest with you. And I write about it in the book, where I had put he and I off. Every time we wanted to go away, I'd be like, well, let me see if Amber and the kids could go. And he'd be like, okay. And then we wait on her to get back and check her schedule, and it wouldn't work out. And before you know it, we lost the opportunity. And I was angry that I'd lost so many opportunities doing what he wanted to do because I'd waited on the kids. And that's when I realized that after he passed away, I had to really work on rebuilding our relationship, because I was the one who was at fault for that, for letting her do that. Instead of me saying, it's okay if you can't come, we're going to go anyway. And even JR, in the last 5 years, 10 years of our relationship, I really navigated different verbiage with him because, you're married 36 years. So I work with my brother, my sisters, everybody. And so every time we would fight with my brother, who was the president of the company, JR would say, Loren, I'm the CEO. I'm the person who founded this company. And you take your brother's side every time. I was like, oh, don't be a baby, JR. Get over it. He's my brother. Get on with yourself. Cut it out. And then I started to realize, we had this thing that every 6 months we sat down and we would say the things that really hurt us about each other. And the last time, 5 years in, he said, I don't like that you don't care what I think about when I say something about your brother. I feel like you disregard me. I'm like, okay, I don't want you to feel that way. And so I changed my words. I would say, every time he would tell me something, I'd say, I understand how you feel. I don't want you to feel that way. And as soon as I did that, my whole life got even better.
You didn't follow it up with I understand why you think that. You're totally and completely wrong, but I understand why you think that.
I tried that in the beginning and it didn't work. I tried that and it still felt the same. So instead, I would just say, I understand how you feel and I don't want you to feel that way. That didn't mean I agree with you. That didn't mean I disagree with you. It just meant I understand. And
I just got remarried, so hopefully that will be a lesson from
this.
I will take
good. And it has been, so many of my friends have told me it has changed the way they're operating now. And I feel like, the book made me see things I'd never, like writing so much about what the pain I was in. You see it.
How soon after were you ready to say, I'm going to go out and pitch this book? Or did you write it and then pitch it?
I already started one of my best friends told me, Lauren, you need to write a journal. The therapy thing isn't working for you. So I opened up my phone and I have like thousands of pages in this note section. Before you knew it, I started reading. I could see it was a book, and it was my book at least. But then I started to realize this is somebody else's story also, because so often somebody says, and for you maybe it's different, right? How should I have my eggs, Lauren, scrambled or sunny side up? And I say, for the first 10 years, I'd be like, oh, scrambled today, sunny side up, baby, whatever you want. And then after 10 years, I'm like, what the fuck do you want? It's your stomach, your eggs. I'm not eating them. Get over it. What is it that you want to? He's like, well, just tell me, should I have scrambled? And it would frustrate me instead of realizing that was his love language. That was his love language to say, Lauren, I love you and I care what you think. And by the way, the same thing when you want me to pick out your shoes, your shirt, the color of your shirt that you wear tonight, that was his way of seeing, and me doing that would mean that I love him.
How long did it take you in your relationship to realize that? Or is that something that you realized in the process of writing the book?
It took me the process of writing the book to see that. Like, there would be days that 20 years in, he'd say scrambled or sunny side up, and I could easily say sunny side up. And then other days when I was overwhelmed, I'd be like, again, for fuck's sake, it's your eggs. Which do you want? And so it took me a long time to see that not long after he died. I didn't see it while he was alive. I didn't. I wish I did. I used to see it as a chore. Okay, I'm picking out eggs today. Okay, I'm searching for cell phones. Okay, I'm picking out the color of the shirt. Okay, I'm picking out the shoes. Because I was working simultaneously with him and I worked for him. So I had a lot to do. So I saw that as like, okay, one more chore I had to do. And really, what I should have seen it as is, it's what he counted on me for. He liked my opinion. He cared about my opinion. Just like he did that day, he didn't care what the other people thought in that room. He said to me, what do you think, Lauren? That's all that really matters. And I didn't understand that. And in the book, in the will he had written to me, like, every outfit you picked out for me, everything you ever did for me, let me know how much you love me. And I love you for that. Like, and I thought I was such an ass so many times when he asked, but we're human. And we go through life and we're going to make mistakes, and not every day is going to be perfect. And so now I try to tell people, pay attention to the love language, because the conversation is different. It's not what my love language is or your love language. It's what theirs is.
Yeah.
And that's why my mom always said to me, and then I understood what she meant when she talked about the time zone. JR's not on the same time zone as you, Lauren. His program is different than yours right now. You can't have everything to conform with what you want. You got to stop with that. Not everything happens when you want it to happen. You've got to understand that people fall in love at different times. And I didn't understand that. I was like, well, doesn't everything, and when you think about it now, it makes so much sense. Right?
But in the moment, you're like,
no,
I don't know what you're
can be an ass.
Oh, yeah.
And I felt that. And so many times, like I used to say to him, why am I spending my whole life looking for cell phones, keys, and your wallet? And he'd be like, I was like, you're so disorganized. I would get frustrated. You're disorganized. Now, this isn't a daily occurrence, but I can remember at least once a month doing this. And I would be like, I can't believe how disorganized you are. Do you know when he passed away, I went downstairs to our home in Connecticut in Greenwich. And he had this giant room he would work in sometimes to organize papers and things. I never knew what he was doing in there because I never really bothered him in there. He liked his quiet space. And I went down there after he passed away, and everything from 1990, from the time we met and started, was every presentation he had ever done, my presentations, labeled, transcribed, filed, perfectly organized with photos of the event in perfect order. And I thought, JR, I am so sorry for one moment for all the times I looked for that wallet, not knowing and not thinking I thought you weren't organizing. You were the most organized of all of us. And so there's things I didn't know that I was mad about. And I was mad at myself for that. But, I think we can only punish ourselves so much. And it took me a long time to forgive myself.
Whenever people ask me, and I feel I think by nature of who I am, to be incredibly honest and not dive into flowery language because that's what irritated me so much when I've been in my grieving process. When people say to me, you know, what's the best piece of advice you can give me? I'm always like, okay, I'm going to be honest. This sucks, but you're going to be okay.
You're going to make it. Or when people would say things like, I'm sure you got this. I would run into somebody like at a store and they would say like, oh my God, how are you feeling? And you'd be like, I wasn't sick. I didn't have the flu. I'm not well. I'm not okay all the time. Some days I'm better than others, or like I didn't want to write you because I knew so many people were. And you're like, okay, come on. Like you could have wrote me. You could have not just said, I'm thinking of you and I don't need to respond back to you. But instead you just didn't write at all. And so, you start to see the difference between those people fast, don't you think?
Yeah. And I'm always the one who reaches out and says, you do not need to respond. I am here for you 24/7. But in a month, when all the chaos has stopped and everyone has gone away,
That's it.
that's when I'm going to start bugging you.
That's it. And that's what, at least just give me a thumbs up, a heart that you're okay. And so many times I've had people say, what's the thing to say?
The thing to say is, I'm here for you. You
That's
don't
it.
need to respond.
I'm here anytime you want me to be there for you. But don't say time heals all, because it doesn't. Time is nothing. It keeps going. It's something that doesn't stop. I woke up after a year and a half of suffering every day, realizing that nobody waited for me.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
I thought about it when I was in the shower this morning. I was thinking about Melissa and Joan and how much a part of my life that was in my life growing up. And I thought how hard, and the feelings that must have transpired for that moment for you. It's like, it's not until you're not really human unless you can sit back and do that and say, like, what did that feel like for somebody who probably had such an incredible, deep love, and yet a deep friendship, and yet a mad at you, pissed off at you.
Well, and like you, we were business partners.
There you go.
And is anybody going to want me as me? I mean, there's a lot of parallels.
And there's a lot of layers.
There's a lot of layers. So I'm going to get shallow for a minute because we've been way too deep and I can only sustain that for so long.
I get it.
Okay. Are you dating? Are you ready to date?
No.
When do you think you're going to be ready to date? Because you're going to have to do it.
I don't know. Like, it's funny, when a lot of times my friends, like they just say, like, do it whenever you're ready. I just have never thought about it right now, to be honest with you. I've learned to take this time to fall in love with myself again. And I needed to do that because the anger, as you know, builds up so much, and that you really dislike yourself so much because even though you had this beautiful love story, you're pissed off that it wasn't perfect and it's not supposed to be.
Right.
And so I had to forgive myself for that and learn to love myself again. And here's my answer is I do get why people start to date right away, because anything that feels good because everything feels so sad. But for me, I've had to sit in that for a moment to make sure I can recover the way I need to recover and learn to like myself again and perform the way I know I can do for me and for our company. But I think that I just don't want to judge it either way. Like whatever happens, happens. I don't know. It won't be easy for me because there's a whole group of people out there who see me several times a year at my events who, just want to see it for me now forever. And then my granddaughter came in the other day and she saw something on my phone where somebody wrote to me like, hey, would you love to have dinner with you? And I didn't respond. And she wrote, Mimi, you would break his heart. And I thought, she's only 10. Of course she's going to say that. And I love her for that. I love her that she loves her pop-up like that. But I just thought to myself, whatever happens, happen. I'm not going to be hard on Loren, however it goes. So whenever it happens, if it happens, he'd have to be really bright, really smart, really kind.
Okay, I'm going to give you a piece of advice before I let you go that was given to me.
Tell me.
Be aware and be fine with that you're going to have to go on practice dates.
I know. How does that happen? How do you do that? It seems
because
so,
you say
like 36 years.
Right, but you say yes and have no expectations because it's like a muscle. You have to learn how to do that again and be fine with saying, not for me. Or, hey, this was fun. Or going home and saying, wow,
That's
just
the
so
most interesting advice I've ever gotten. And it's probably the realest, most honest thing that someone can say is you'd have to go on a practice date because
oh, no,
36 years.
multiple practice dates.
I wouldn't even know how to respond or what to do or how to look or how to act. I've just been me and JR, Loren and JR and Loren.
But when you're ready, give yourself the time to practice date.
I'll call you and tell you how it goes.
Because it's awful, and you come home and go like, oh my God, I just humiliated myself beyond words. Or you will be like, I never want to do this again.
I can't do it again. I can't wait to fill you in on that.
Oh yeah.
I think you have to do, I think probably people are afraid to ask me out too. I don't know.
We'll talk offline about that. I get that 100% too. But just steel yourself and prepare to practice date.
Practice dating. I got it. That's it. Yeah. Practice speed dating probably.
Yeah. The book is amazing. Scrambled or Sunny Side Up, Living Your Best Life After Losing Your Greatest Love. It is out now, Loren. This has been a joy and wonderful and fine. And from someone who's further along in the process, you're doing great and are right where you should be.
Thank you, sweetie. That means so much. I know that you've been through it. So it means a lot coming from you. I've often thought about you so much. It's crazy that we're on this together because like I said, I grew up with you guys. So I love you and I appreciate doing this with you.
Thank you so much.